Tonight, Biden, the border, and Beijing. A presidential visit to Canada under a cloud of thorny political issues. Pressuring the Prime Minister for a deep dive into election meddling.
When did the Prime Minister become aware?
The debate and the denials.
What has been reported is false.
The U.S. president finally here.
A lot's going to get accomplished, I think, over the next 24 hours.
The meeting that could decide if Roxham Road will be a dead end for asylum seekers.
We're still going, and we will keep going as far as we can.
Plus, a retro retail revival.
The nostalgia for sure, but also finding things in this day and age that's more affordable.
The return of Zellers, a new spin for an old brand. What's in store?
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, reporting tonight from Ottawa.
Good evening, everyone. The 46th American president is now on Canadian soil for the first time, as he and the Prime Minister are plagued by the same accusation. They're soft on China. The reception was warm, even if the weather was not, as Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden stepped off Air Force One. Joyce Napier and Vashi Kapoulos will have more on the agenda in just a moment, but we begin tonight with CTV's Judy Trin, with developments in the election meddling allegations casting a pall over the presidential visit. Judy.
Omar, just before Joe Biden landed here in Ottawa, opposition MPs were in the House voting on a motion to hold a public inquiry into foreign interference.
I declare the motion carried.
The NDP motion passes. It's non-binding, but it adds to the pressure and the growing collateral damage.
The truth will protect us. Our honor and our family will get through this together.
Just 16 hours earlier, MP Han Dong resigned from the Liberal caucus after Global News, citing unnamed security sources, reported Dong allegedly advised a senior Chinese diplomat to delay the release of the two Michaels, who were jailed in China for 1,000 days.
I want to assure Mr. Michael Spavor and Mr. Michael Covert and their families that I did nothing to cause them any harm.
The Chinese consulate in Toronto called the claims groundless, saying they jeopardized China-Canadian relations. Meanwhile, intelligence experts say the leak has damaged Canada's spy agency and its operations.
To leak the kind of information he or she, whoever it is, has leaked, does damage both to the service's capability to operate, because it may reveal to, in this case, the Chinese, ways in which the service operates.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It was political fodder in question period.
The intelligence services that came up with this information to the media would have told the Prime Minister. When did they tell him?
Bringing back the two Michaels, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, was the utmost priority of this government.
The Liberals aren't prioritizing a public inquiry. They didn't vote with the NDP, but Jagmeet Singh says the NDP will still prop up the government.
Make sure people feel comfortable voting and feel safe to vote and are not being influenced in their votes. That goal is met by having a public inquiry. That goal is not met by triggering an election.
Han Dong is now sitting as an independent MP. And Omar, today he voted in support of a public inquiry, siding with the opposition against his former party.
All right, Judy, thank you. Let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapoulos, right now. Vashi, these developments are happening right ahead of this high-stakes summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. How could they impact the discussions between the two leaders?
I think the accusations or the allegations themselves are not necessarily going to have a huge impact, just because I've been trying to talk to all the Americans I can get my hands on, and essentially they're not too bothered by them. They're not surprised, and they don't think necessarily it had a material impact on the outcome of the election. But the bigger question is around China itself, right? And the increasingly hawkish position the White House is taking towards China. I think that remains a vulnerability, the contrast between the kind of questions about Are the Liberals too soft on China? Is the federal government too soft? The contrast between that and the very specific position the U.S. has taken, I think will form the subtext to at least some of the back and forth.
It's a packed agenda. China just one of the many issues. What specifically will you be watching out for?
I think it kind of jumps off of that and sort of the insecurity of the world. I'm really watching in tomorrow's parliamentary address if we hear a little bit of what we heard with President Obama, which is thanks for all your help, but please do more. And if it is that explicit, and if it is kind of like the world needs more Canada, spend a little bit more money on defense. I know they're coming here with that message behind the scenes. I'm curious to see if it's also to public facing and in Parliament as well.
All right, Vashi Kivelos, thank you so much for this tonight. And Vashi will be leading CTV News Channel's live coverage of the President's address to Parliament beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. While official business begins in the morning, tonight was set aside for a more casual get-together.
We're staying. That's the plan.
Let's bring in CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Joyce Napier with more on day one. Joyce.
Omar, Canada waited over 2 years for this visit, delayed by COVID, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and growing tensions with China. Finally, the U.S. president found time in his busy schedule to come to Canada for a working visit. Greeted by the Governor General and several ministers, Jill and Joe Biden kicked off a visit meant to reboot the Canada-U.S. relationship put through the test during the Trump years.
I think the relationship is in repair mode. It's work in progress.
A packed schedule and a long list of asks from both sides. But already a possible breakthrough on one major irritant, the Safe Third Country Agreement that has seen tens of thousands of asylum seekers entering Canada from the U.S., most of them through Roxham Road in Quebec.
I think we should expect it to be not just for Roxham Road, but right across our long border. And it's important to build trust between our border agencies, between our intelligence agencies.
Canadian officials are not giving details, but the LA Times reporting this evening a deal has been reached, allowing both countries to turn back asylum seekers who are caught within 14 days. The opposition is still asking for more.
There are some signals that there's a solution. If the solution solves a problem and something we're open to, our preferred option is still to suspend the agreement.
But other global issues are on the agenda, including the war in Ukraine, the ongoing violence in Haiti, the modernization of NORAD, the North American Air Defense, and China.
We are going to have to continue to be wide-eyed and clear about the threat that China poses and wants to pose to the stability of our democracies.
The two leaders are also expected to discuss North American supply chains, global warming, critical minerals, and a partnership they need to strengthen to face global challenges. Omar?
All right, Joyce, thanks. As we mentioned, lots of topics to discuss tomorrow, including, as Joyce referenced, a deal that could spell the end of the road for asylum seekers streaming into Canada from the U.S. through a rural crossing in Quebec. The vast majority end up in Ontario, including a border city we visited today, where they are struggling to cope. This bridge that connects upstate New York to Cornwall, Ontario, is the most direct path to the Canadian city.
It's illegal to cross this way. If you do, you'll be arrested.
But not an option for desperate asylum seekers forced to use an unofficial crossing at Quebec's Roxham Road.
I've been in Cornwall for 2 months now. I came in January, middle of January.
She's too scared to show her face. But Maria, a mother of 4, wants to share her harrowing journey, telling us she fled from Angola to Virginia, to Roxham Road, and now Cornwall, where she's waiting to see if her asylum claim is approved.
I feel worried about what's going to happen, especially for my kids.
Maria is one of 900 asylum seekers in this city, stretched so thin it's almost tapped out, says Mayor Justin Towndale. How much advance warning are you getting about the buses that are coming to Cornwall?
Not much at all.
So days, hours?
I would say hours at best.
And because half of Cornwall's 1,000 rooms are contracted to the federal government for asylum seekers, the city can't collect hotel taxes from tourists.
We estimate that throughout a period of a year, should this be ongoing for a year, we're going to lose about $320,000 in our municipal accommodation tax, which is quite a substantial sum.
That's forced him to dip into a municipal reserve fund while he waits to see if the $2 million in government funding he requested in January is greenlit. So how do you plan?
You really can't. You just can't.
All the more reason, Cornwall's young mayor, a child of Indian immigrants, says he's pleading for more support to give new arrivals a chance to thrive.
Well, I hope the Prime Minister, talks to the President about how the system is broken, because at the end of the day, it really is, and it's both countries together at this point.
Another priority for the president on this trip, helping Haiti. He has a proposal to end the cycle of violence perpetuated by armed gangs, civil unrest, hunger, and an outbreak of cholera. As Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin explains, Washington wants Ottawa to take a lead role in enforcing the peace.
The desperation of Haitians in this makeshift camp tells the story of those caught in extreme violence. Shootings, sexual assaults, abductions for ransom are rampant. Gangs say Natasha Germain killed her husband and left her raising 5 children in hunger and utter misery. Haiti's collapse has prompted the UN's call for a specialized support force. And whether Canada should lead it is expected to be on the presidential visit agenda.
A multinational force is one option. It's not the only option. And when it comes to having a multinational force, somebody has to lead it.
Since Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry called for international help in the fall, violence has escalated even further. Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, or Doctors Without Borders, has operated in Haiti for 30 years. In early March, warring factions crossed a red line, leading MSF to shut down its hospital in Cité Soleil to protect staff and patients.
The front line was literally right out the door between two factions who were warring it out, and you can imagine the deterring effect, obviously, on people who are trying to seek medical care.
Heartbreaking choice. Those on the ground say the retreat has dramatic consequences.
In the case of Cité Soleil, we're talking about more than 300,000 people living in unsanitary conditions with very limited access to clean water.
In Montreal, in the shadow of this mural commissioned by MSF, a large Haitian community is debating what Canada should do. Jean-Ernest Pierre runs CEPAM Radio.
Hey, nobody gets through.
He says after a disastrous history of foreign interventions, there's a list of worries about international boots on the ground. Still, Canada is a good friend of Haiti's, he says, and has to find a way to help. So far, Ottawa has imposed sanctions on some politicians and business leaders and said a Haitian-led solution is the way to go. Omar.
All right, we'll see what comes out of those talks tomorrow. Geneviève Beauchemin in Montreal, where today a tip from the FBI led the RCMP to arrest an 18-year-old man. Mohamed Amin Assal appeared in court virtually. RCMP say they feared he could commit a terrorism offense, although no charges were laid today, and he was released with strict conditions.
The result today is a positive one in the light that he received conditions for his release, and the case will follow course with him free.
Assal has to wear an electronic bracelet while he awaits his next hearing. Edmonton police now believe the teenager who gunned down 2 officers last week also shot and injured a man 4 days earlier at a nearby Pizza Hut. Security video shows an armed person entering the restaurant and firing at an employee. Police say forensic evidence proves it was the same gun that killed Constables Brett Ryan and Travis Jordan. They say the 16-year-old accused who killed himself had been apprehended last November under the Mental Health Act and was taken to hospital for an assessment. How he got the gun is part of the investigation. Time for a short break, but when we come back.
Congressman, we do take these issues very seriously.
Yes or no?
American lawmakers target the head of TikTok, plus a video game to revive a language at risk of being lost. Another day of violent turmoil in France against the government's new pension law. More than 1 million people marched across the country, 800,000 in Paris alone, angry that the retirement age has been raised by 2 years. Today, the City Hall in Bordeaux was set on fire. Unions have called for nationwide strikes next week to coincide with the state visit of King Charles. In Washington today, TikTok's chief executive faced more than 5 hours of questioning on Capitol Hill over the company's bonds with Beijing. And it was a bipartisan effort, with both Republican and Democratic lawmakers taking turns. CTV's Richard Madden on the testimony that at times got testy.
In his first appearance before Congress, the head of TikTok was in the hot seat.
Your platform should be banned.
U.S. lawmakers raising suspicions about the Chinese government's control of the wildly popular app. TikTok is owned by ByteDance. Its majority shareholder is China's ruling party. The company CEO insists there's no spying on Americans.
We will firewall protected U.S. data from unwanted foreign access. American data stored on American soil by an American company, overseen by American personnel.
But citing national security risks, both Democrats and Republicans question if China's government could force TikTok to give up the private data of its 150 million American users or purposely spread disinformation on its platform.
TikTok is a weapon by the Chinese Communist Party to spy on you, manipulate what you see, and exploit for future generations.
Congresswoman, I have seen no evidence that the Chinese government has access to that data. They have never asked us. We have not provided.
I find that actually preposterous.
This is a precautionary move.
Today, the UK announced TikTok will soon be banned from all its government smartphones, in line with Canada and the US. But some TikTok influencers here say Congress is fear-mongering.
The thing I think Congress is missing is that that's their experience with the app, and the average TikToker, the average user's experience is very deeply based in community.
What it did for me is to reinforce the need for privacy legislation. I'm not someone who's coming out yet to ban TikTok.
Would you recommend young people install the TikTok app?
No, I wouldn't.
Now, the White House wants China to sell its stake of TikTok or face a possible ban here in the U.S. Beijing fired back, saying not a chance, which means pulling the plug on the app may be much more complicated than what many lawmakers are demanding. Richard Madden, CTV News, Washington.
And in a controversial move in the world of sports, transgender women will be banned from competing in elite female track and field events.
The council has agreed to exclude male to female transgender athletes who have been through male puberty from female world ranking competitions.
The World Athletics Council claims those who transitioned after puberty have an unfair advantage, but they're establishing a working group to, quote, study the issue. Still ahead, 5 boys in an underground ordeal.
We're stuck in the sewers.
You're stuck where?
In the sewers.
Don't worry, they got out of this tight spot. Their rescue story is next. In a retail reboot, Zellers is back. And as CTV's Heather Wright reports, sentimentality may determine their success.
The lowest price may no longer be the law.
So far, so good, actually.
But shoppers were eager to experience Zellers again for the first time in a decade.
The nostalgia for sure, but also finding things in this day and age that's more affordable. We're definitely on the lookout.
A dozen Zellers locations opened in Alberta and Ontario today, with 13 more set to open in the coming months, selling everything from tableware to clothes to pet supplies, though Cheryl couldn't find what she was looking for.
What do you think so far?
I was looking for sleeveless nylon nightgowns, and I haven't found them yet.
These are not standalone stores. This one in Toronto is next to the Hudson's Bay Ladies Lingerie Department. But it's a low-cost way for HBC to reinvigorate a brand inside space they already have. Still, it's a tough time for department stores. Nordstrom is in the midst of a liquidation sale as it gets set to close all Canadian locations, and fears of a recession could impact retail even further. In a tough retail landscape, Zellers is taking it slow. The company has plans to expand, but that all depends on how well these first locations do and if customers keep coming back.
We're going to listen to Canadians, see what they like, see what's working, not working, and then we'll expand from there.
The stores have certainly generated a lot of buzz. Whether they can maintain it is what retail experts are watching for.
Here's the linchpin is, will consumers go out of their way to go to that store? And I think in the first month they will, but after that it might be a tough sell.
But with a fresh look and low-priced items, Zellers is banking on customers buying more than just nostalgia. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
A mid-air scare on a Southwest Airlines flight after one of the two pilots had a medical emergency and an off-duty pilot from another airline on board stepped in.
The captain became incapacitated while en route. He's in the back of the aircraft right now with the flight attendants, but we need to get him on an ambulance immediately.
The pilot was having stomach pains before fainting in the cockpit. The passenger helped with radio communications as the Southwest co-pilot made a safe emergency landing in Las Vegas, where an alternate crew took over and the captain received medical attention. And here's another dramatic rescue, this one on Staten Island in New York. 5 curious boys crawled into a tunnel and got lost, so they called 911.
We're stuck in the sewers.
You're stuck where?
In the sewers.
They had traveled up to 1,300 feet, which is quite a way.
The boys were down there for more than an hour, and at first firefighters had trouble finding them, so the dispatcher offered this advice.
Call for help, guys. They hear you. Call for help.
It worked. The boys were found unharmed and brought above ground, although no word on whether or not they are grounded at home. After the break, Language Matters, a Mohawk mission to save their spoken word. We end tonight on a unique effort to save the rich linguistic legacy of the Mohawk people. As Vanessa Lee explains in tonight's Indigenous Circle, on this preservation project, gamesmanship is critical.
These Montreal sisters are on a mission that is close to their hearts, to save the language of their ancestors.
My name, Gahondawaks, means shaker of the field. My name is Wanagaragu, and it means sweetgrass.
Gahondawaks and Wanagaragun Tawisha are from Ganasitage, west of Montreal. They learned to speak Ganyigeha, the Mohawk language, in elementary school. But with few chances to practice, it faded from memory.
Our mother and father don't speak at all, but our grandmother and grandfather, they spoke fluently, but they didn't pass it on to their kids.
They hope to revive the language through Indigenous video games. Their goal, to make learning fun and engaging for everyone young and old. The games are based on well-known Haudenosaunee legends, stories steeped in history they heard growing up.
There's something about Indigenous languages that will teach you how to think of yourself in relation to nature and in relation to other people in a much more respectful way.
Today, the Mohawk language has fewer than 4,000 speakers worldwide. Most of them are elderly.
Do you worry that your language will be lost?
Yes. Yes. I lost
I think it's
a lot
big
of sleep about it.
motivator to continue to motivate us to work on these projects because we want to be able to help the teachers in our communities. Hopefully we remind ourselves a lot more about how to speak and how, like, the right intonation and communicate with each other eventually.
Once these games are off the ground, they want to expand to other Indigenous languages too, as they fight to keep a crucial part of their identity alive.
Mohawk legends, and if we
Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Montreal.
And that's a snapshot of this Thursday from Ottawa. For all of us at CTV National News, thanks for watching and good night.